Hello and welcome to the Lake Vostok Entity. Last week we talked about a few encounters with alien entities that were really weird and fantastic. Today we are keeping with the odd topics and looking at a story that sounds like something you would read in a science fiction novel, but it is claimed to have really happened. Allegedly. This topic was suggested by a name I am sure you're all familiar with, and that would be Wide Awake Viking. So I must thank you for such an interesting and fantastic topic. Before marching forward with our video, I did want to state that last week I tried to give everyone credit for providing me with that supposed cryptid photo that I had been hunting down. For the most part it appears I was fairly successful, but since I talked to many of you over various forms of media and devices, I did miss one person who helped me out. So I extend a thank you to Vladimir Benia for helping me out with my cryptid photo search as well. I try to do right by people who help myself as well as this community, so when I mess up I do my best to correct my errors. With that all out of the way, let's start looking into this oddity. Vostok Station was set up by Russian researchers on December 16, 1957, and it is located on Princess Elizabeth Island in Antarctica. Its purpose was to do many experiments, but with this came the realization that this frozen landscape housed a gigantic hidden freshwater lake that was located around 13,000 feet below the icy surface. With this, it ignited the minds of those involved with the idea of what discoveries important to science could be found entombed in that body of water. Radar satellite images showed that this lake was quite immense, since it was 160 miles long and 30 miles wide. It was given its name Lake Vostok for the research station, and it was also the name of the ship used for the first Russian Antarctic expedition in 1820. Soon a massive drill was set up, and the team began drilling core samples at various depths as early as the 1970s. Through the years, other holes were drilled, and each time the team was able to go deeper and deeper. From what I found, the drill was actually operated 24 hours a day, with many different shifts set up. This process wasn't fast in the least, since at its peak performance, the drill managed to only cut through 5 to 6 feet of ice a day. Then finally on February 5, 2012, the drill broke through the ice and hit the surface of the lake. Before continuing, I do want to state that all the previous information is well documented, so there isn't any question involved with it. However, we are leaving that realm now, so hold on tight. Allegedly, a few years after this event, a scientist named Dr. Anton Padalka claims that something more sinister happened with their research than what was published in the news. After breaking through the ice, a team of 8 researchers had begun to investigate the lake, but just as they reached the waters, their radios were inexplicably knocked out for 5 days. It is often cited that Dr. John Priscu from Montana State University, that has had experiences with Antarctic exploration, at the time told Fox News about the radio going out that he can only imagine what the team must be going through. Dr. Padalka claimed that during that time the team were fighting for their life against a ravenous creature. In his version, it is reported upon entering the water they encountered a large 33-foot long creature that resembled a squid or octopus, but it had 14 arms. It was given the name Organism 46B, and there was a lot more to this creature than what met the eye. It isn't explained how it was done, but apparently this creature was responsible for causing the radios to be cut off, and in this story, it is said that 46B did this intentionally. This being had multiple adaptations that it acquired through the years in order to hunt and kill its prey. Not only did it act like an octopus where it could use its arms to entangle something and inject it with a neurotoxin, but apparently it could also flood the water with this toxin and affect anything within a 150-foot radius. If that wasn't bad enough, it is said that it was able to almost telepathically hypnotize its victims. This characteristic was seen when a longtime friend of Dr. Padalka named Dr. Vinogradov became the victim of this creature. Apparently the team watched in horror as their friend paddled on the water's surface with a huge blissful smile on his face as 46B approached. He kept this demeanor up until the creature wrapped its tentacles around him, tore off his head, and quickly devoured the rest of his body. Things only get worse from here, since much like an octopus can mimic patterns and shapes to avoid predation or to hunt, so could this being. Only it used this ability in a strange way. At one point, the team saw what appeared to be another diver swimming towards the group, but it wasn't long before they realized it was actually the Tetradecapus, meaning 14-armed octopus, mimicking a human form. Sadly, this wasn't figured out quick enough, since 46B was able to grab a hold of another team member and tear him apart before vanishing back into the dark water. Finally, the last feat of ability that this creature was capable of was revealed when it tried to grab a hold of another team member, and she was able to cut off the arm with an axe. Later that night, as the team fell asleep on an ice bank, the severed arm crawled up and wrapped itself around the neck of the person who cut it off and strangled her to death. The 5 remaining team members realized that they needed to outsmart this very intelligent creature somehow. Dr. Padalka didn't go into details about how they did this, but somehow they managed to trap the being in the tank. The team then returned to the icy surface with the creature in tow and expected to be honored for their discovery. To their dismay, the core hole was sealed up and it was reported to the world that there wasn't much of interest found in the water. In fact, the whole mission involving the scientists entering the water of the lake was covered up, and it was said not to have happened. For fear of his life, Dr. Padalka moved out of the country and is apparently in hiding. Before leaving Russia, he did discover that Russian President Putin plans to weaponize 46B by recovering eggs from it and placing them in the waters of Russia's enemies. It was thought that if this creature was so intelligent, had amazing hunting adaptations, and with how bloodthirsty it would prove to be a valuable weapon. Okay, so that was the story behind the entity that was supposedly in Lake Vostok. I can already imagine your comments if I ended it here, but that isn't how I make content. We could obviously rule this as a fake pretty easily, but there is so much to learn about it that we need to examine it further. So let's look at a few of the facts and see what we can figure out. I have so much to say that I almost don't know where to start, so I suppose it is best if we do this chronologically. First things first. As I stated in the beginning, a lot of the information is actually very valid. The station, their purpose, the hidden lake, and even the boreholes are very true. Many people have tried to track down references to Dr. Padalka, but all have found nothing. This normally is troubling, but it is possible that if this story is indeed true, then he or she may be in hiding somewhere or even changed their name. It is odd that if they are using a fake name, that they would keep the doctor in it, but maybe that is intended to make it seem more reputable. Moving on, I looked into if anyone actually physically entered the water, and all sources say no. However, Dr. Padalka says this fact was covered up. So, are we stalemated then? Not really, when you look at the facts. From what I could tell, the team didn't just bore a hole in the ice that was the same diameter the whole way down. It looks like they started large and then stepped it down smaller and smaller as they neared the bottom. I may be mistaken in that thought though. What I am not mistaken about is that here are images of the bit that finally broke through the ice into the lake. Notice something odd? That bit seems like it would make a hole that you probably could, at most, fit your arm through. If the images are accurate, then there is no way a human would be able to fit in that borehole. So, unless the group were drilling another hole that was larger, I don't see this story being accurate from the start. For the sake of adventure, let's assume that somehow, in some way, they did in fact manage to enter the water. Well, we quickly realize that the previous problem isn't anything when compared to what we find in the murky depths. Let's talk about the 46B. This 33-foot creature has been locked under the ice for quite a long time. Even though the lake is huge, it seems odd that a 33-foot man-eating creature would have enough to sustain it for all those years. Nessie has the same problem, but even with that one, there are said to be openings under the water that lead to the ocean. That isn't the case here, since all satellite images show that the lake is cut off from everything else. Moving on, I wonder how the creature realized that the team had radios, something it had never seen, and that it needed to take them out. It seems like a really odd and specific trait to have for hunting. Unless it would be a tool used to disrupt electrical impulses, I can't see much use, since, other than hitting the radios, it didn't seem to affect the research team. Here's where things are interesting, as facts blend with fiction. Dr. John Priscu is real, and yes, he did make this statement to the news about losing contact with the team. The thing is that he was referencing the actual station losing radio contact, and not the divers, as the story would lead you to believe. Going back to 46B, I have seen some pose a question about the neurotoxin in the water. Some point to wetsuits being used, so the tainted water would be able to reach the team member's skin. As others have pointed out, a wetsuit in a sub-zero climate seems like an odd and possibly deadly choice. What is interesting is that while the surface may be negative 89 degrees Celsius or negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit, the lake was actually warmed by geothermal energy. How much warmer is it? I don't know, but you still would be freezing in a wetsuit before you reach the water. I will jump past the part about telekinesis and the fact that after being attacked by a massive monster, the team were concerned by the sudden appearance of a quote-unquote new diver swimming towards them. Let's talk about the arm story. It is really odd that a team member happened to carry along with her an axe. I'll ignore how hard it would be to swing an axe underwater, but you may find it interesting that this inclusion is based on a real, albeit not as fantastic, event. In super cold temperatures, the human body starts to have a lot of trouble adapting. People can experience many kinds of symptoms, but I won't go into them here. In 1959, two scientists in the research station were playing a game of chess, and one of them lost. This participant became so outraged, probably due to the climate messing with his body, that he grabbed an ice axe and attacked the other player. Some stories say he managed to kill him, while others say he was just wounded. Either way, from that point on, chess was actually banned on the station. While a little off topic, I think this story may be the source for the odd inclusion of an axe being used to attack a monster. Back to the creature encounter. I really am puzzled where the team found an ice bank to sleep for the night, since the water touches the bottom of the ice. It wasn't as if they had to rappel down a hole to get to the lake. It was filled with water. It is true that octopus arms will still move around and can try to feed a mouth that isn't there if cut off. The problem is that they only do this for a short period of time, and they certainly can't crawl around looking for revenge. That may sound funny to say, but in this story, the severed limb obviously hunted down the one person out of the remaining 6 who had wronged it. The last part of the story is the real issue here. Out of nowhere, and for no possible reason, the team either brought with them or MacGyvered some type of tank capable of housing a 33-foot creature? Not a single part of this makes sense. If they happen to have it on them, what was their intention for its use when they shimmied down the borehole? If they made it, I'd love to know what they used for materials. Now, the part of the story of the hole being sealed up is partially true. I don't know if it was this hole or if it was another though. The thing is that many things were reportedly discovered in the water, and the intent was to put a drone down the hole to gather more samples. In fact, the drill and station are still in operation as we speak. Although I do see others claiming that many other odd things were found in the lake, such as a UFO. But I won't get into that. As for weaponizing the creature, many people laugh at that thought, but I don't see it as far-fetched. Through history, many animals have been utilized for purposes of war, so why not a telepathic, EMP-producing, highly toxic, hyper-intelligent octopus? Tetradecapus. The planting of eggs in foreign waters would make sense, other than that it opens a lot more problems. Wouldn't fish eat the eggs? Would the new environment be right for them to hatch? Who would be the target? People going for a swim in the lake? What would keep them from hatching, going out to sea, and becoming as much of a problem for your enemies as they would be for you? I see way too many variables that would need solutions for this to even be considered a viable option. So, I would say that this story is completely false, and I will stick by that until I start seeing reports of swimmers being attacked by an unknown and strange cephalopod. As many of you are aware, I normally won't rule out a sighting as fake, especially since there are plenty of cryptid sightings that could be considered too fantastic to be real. Those stories are fantastic, and I understand why many don't believe they exist. However, there is a difference between many of the cryptid stories and this one. All of them have a mix of fantastic information that is blended with real known factual information. Most all cryptid sightings have a good portion of, dare I say, unbelievable information, but they also have more cold hard facts mixed in. This ratio, or blending of information, is normally high enough that even the most skeptical of people can't flat out say with 100% certainty that some cryptids don't exist. I repeat, some. Whereas this story has the mix of mythic tales and facts, but the ratio is off. There is real information here, but those facts pale in comparison to everything else. When every detail of the story is questionable or impossible, then it makes it hard to lend the retelling any credibility. Everything in this story outside of the Russian team drilling a hole in Antarctica is so convoluted that I feel even the most open-minded person in the world would find this strange. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this story, but that only goes so far for me when it is being moved from just an interesting story to, this really happened, people. So I hope you all really enjoyed this story, and again I must thank Wide Awake Viking for suggesting it to me. If I missed something, please let me know, but this is all the information I could find. So join me again next week as we return to the Cryptid by State series, where we are looking at Missouri. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.